Hello and welcome to another episode of The Swing. As always, it's your boy HK and I'm joined by my co-host, that guy Owais, as we come to you live tonight, Wednesday evening, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, a day later than we usually do, but it's for a reason. It is for a very specific reason that we get to go and make this episode on a Wednesday. And that reason is because we want to take this opportunity now to break down and preview a very, very hotly contested series. In my opinion, the real NBA Finals, and we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit later. But in the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks, both of them going ahead and finishing off their series, Milwaukee in a sweep against the Miami Heat, bring the brooms out, get their revenge for that embarrassing defeat the year prior. And of course, the Brooklyn Nets, even though they had that one game that just kind of slipped by them on the back of Jason Tatum having an incredible series, and that game in particular, they still were able to go ahead and finish off the Boston Celtics in a 5-game gentleman's sweep. Let's go ahead and say that, where they now also get to move on to the second round, looking more and more confident and looking more and more ready to show just exactly why they are the juggernaut that they have been. And before we do all of that, though, and before we get to talk about our sponsor, we will also be spending a little bit of time to kind of just bask in the glory, bask in the awe of what we saw last night. For those who happened to fall asleep early, I feel sorry for you because that was an instant classic yesterday between the Denver Nuggets and the Portland Trail Blazers. We got to see Dame time. We got to see the ultimate Joker as a wild card. Just an absolutely ridiculous game, end to end. What looked like a blowout halfway through looked like it completely turned around for the Blazers. And then just when the Nuggets looked like they've got this game in the bag, in regulation, in first overtime, and then finally in second overtime, on the back of some incredible shot making, not only from the Denver side, but more specifically from a certain record breaker that we are going to speak about, and it is that time for sure. But speaking of that time, as always, the Swing from the start of time has been sponsored by Thrive Fantasy. And if for those who aren't aware as of yet, why aren't you? ThriveFantasy.com, daily fantasy sports props app where you can go ahead and join tournaments on the daily to be able to pick over and under on different statistical measures. And if you happen to have a top lineup that night, there are big cash prizes to be won. And as a loyal listener of the Swing Podcast, if you go ahead and sign up using the promo code SWING SWING, you will get your deposit matched up to 100% for up to the first $50 that you go ahead and put in. So definitely get on there, sign up, make your picks, win money with the Swing, sign up, and prop up today. That guy Owais, I know you were watching that game yesterday. I know that entire sequence just kept getting increasingly ridiculous. We saw the kind of shots, the kind of shot making that we saw from Damian Lillard, that we saw from Nikola Jokic. Both of these guys who have been having just absolutely ridiculous playoff series, ridiculous playoff careers, making their names on making big bucket after big bucket. But in the end, wasn't this really a fight of which supporting cast member would happen to show up?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at what happened. I think the meme boys have all noticed how quiet CJ McCollum was the entire game, and pretty much everybody else on the Portland Trail Blazers. So you had this one-man show where it was absolutely needed in order for them to even be close in that game. Dame Lillard had to drop 55, 12 of 14 shooting. True percentage shooting was something like ridiculous of 90-something percent, something I was reading. But what a game. Like in every case, you're like, okay, Denver has it. There's no way this team's coming back. And then Damian Lillard just doesn't miss. And you kind of saw it in the reaction of Austin Rivers, who kind of had the assignment to guard him late. What the heck was Damian Lillard on? I want you to talk about it. Explain to me what you saw in his game yesterday.
Some people are humans, some people are top-level ballers, and some people, much like your stream right now, has just disappeared and ascended to the next level. definitely exit from full screen and go ahead and get it playing now. But what an absolute dominant performance. And look, there's just so many things that we can go about speaking with regards to what Dame's performance was. 55 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists. He broke a number of records on the way there. Highest score for him, 55. It beats his career high that he had with another 50-point game earlier in the playoff. 55 and 10, or in fact, a game of 50 points and 10 assists, never been done before in the playoffs. And he did it shooting 70% from the field, 70. And that included 70% from the three-point line, where he made 12 three-pointers to be able to go ahead and keep the Portland Trailblazers in this, because frankly, this game, they had no business whatsoever. They did not play well overall at all. They did get a couple of decent performances outside of Robert Covington, who had finally his first, I would say, legitimately good game in the playoffs, 19 and 11 in that one. Nurkic is playing well until he, as always, finds himself a way to foul out on just stupid plays, which definitely hurt the Trailblazers. But to be able to come back from 22 points down going into near halftime and go ahead and take the lead in the fourth was completely on the back of Damian Lillard and his masterful performance. And, you know, at some point, much like Austin Rivers was just like hands up to the gods when he finally missed, you just have to tip your hat to when someone has that kind of night. Just the shot making was out of this world. We talk about the kind of shots Steph Curry has made. We kind of talk about some of the clutch shots that we have seen from a number of other big players, but there's just something special when Dame time clocks it up, because some of those threes were just ridiculous. Like, I'm pretty sure, as much as, you know, Dame would tell you that he practices those, he can do those all the time, some of those were 100% just ultimate heat checks, especially the one late on in overtime where he literally had grabbed it, turned around. It's like a no-scope 360 shot that he just goes and takes over Austin Rivers, and it's nothing but net. So that by the time he hit his 12th three, which was a banker, it was just one of those where, man, like, it's just having that.
You just feel it.
You just feel it, and it's like, look, no one is going to stop Dame tonight, but that is where depth comes in, and we've said this before. Look, Jokic himself has been an absolute monster in the playoffs, and it's funny that we can just keep talking about the kind of game that Damian Lillard had, because it was a game and a half, but let's not forget the fact that even though Dame himself dropped his 55 and 10, Jokic himself had a 38, 11, and 9 performance in this game, and really, this has been in line with what Jokic has been doing all playoffs, that level of consistency throughout his playoff career, his young playoff career where he's made playoffs 3 times. You should go and look at those numbers. They are absolutely wild. He shoots about 55% from the field, 42% from the three-point line, 85% from the free throw line, like the model of absolute consistency. The only one part of his game in this series that had kind of been missing or understated from what it usually is was his passing. He had been averaging 4 assists a game, 12 assists for this entire playoff run up until this game where he finally broke through and got 9. And all of that just comes back to what makes Jokic so great has been that capability to be able to find his teammates in vision areas that you otherwise would not expect. And you're seeing that now here. And credit to the entire Nugget squad, because as I've spoken about, Jamal Murray or not, this team is incredibly deep. And there's just so many guys that have that capability to be able to have big games. One guy who I'm particularly going to go ahead and call out here is Monte Morris, who has been criminally underrated for a backup guard for a while now. But remember, this is a guy that the Nuggets were able to sign on a 3-year deal for $5 million. $5 million for 3 years, which is absolutely insane. The guy goes ahead and drops 28, 3, and 5 in the biggest game of the Denver Nuggets playoffs to not only put themselves in a position to be able to take this series, but you lose here at home, it would have been really, really tough to go ahead and try and get that down in Portland. But now the momentum is all with you. Everything is putting in place to what the Nuggets will feel that they can wrap this series up in another game in Portland, because they have been quite good away from home. They finally got some performance out of Aaron Gordon as well, who had been, one of the biggest pickups of the trade deadline. Like in name, that was one of the biggest moves that happened in the trade deadline. But while his defense has actually been quite good throughout this Nuggets run since he's got there, his offense has definitely been lacking, especially shooting from the outside. So as far as the Nuggets themselves are concerned, they'll be very happy that he got 2 of 4 outside, had a really good rebounding game, 14, 10, and 4. That's exactly what they'll need because they have enough shot making otherwise to get themselves through this series.
Absolutely. Aaron Gordon is one of those guys we always said like has immense ceilings for the kind of player he can become. And this trade that we had mentioned felt like it would be the perfect opportunity for him to kind of exploit some of his strengths. He doesn't have to play a different type of game, just exploit the strengths that he has, which is a fantastic body, like a really good head around the basket. So he has good touch there too. So like just cut in, your boys will find you. Jokic will find you. And like you mentioned, Jokic had a fantastic game. So some of the most important things about that, Denver win was just how impressive those passes, like those assists from Jokic, came in the clutch times that they needed to stay ahead, right? So that is something that's super underrated and probably wasn't even mentioned in the sort of performance that we got from Damian Lillard, let's be honest. So, like, I don't want to take anything away from this series because just neck and neck, it's been absolutely insane to watch. Just like imagine like you're seeing a little rivalry between look at that freaking layup, like insanity. And like credit to Austin.
This is where it just started getting like stop it Dame. It's getting like, to the point where it's like this is ridiculous. You got 28 seconds.
Look at this right here. Look at this. This is the most ridiculous step back I have seen. Like you can't even discredit Austin Rivers for that. Like that's good defense. It's just look at this. Another one. He just throws it up, the trayer. The prayer, and it goes, and you're like, okay, this is, I hope, what we are going to expect from a guy like Gary Trent. Anyway, that's a Raptors little related shot there. But yeah, incredible game. But like here, now let's talk about the series itself. Unless Portland is able to get that supporting cast to do what they need to do. And the problem with them is always, we've talked about it, is their movement isn't the greatest. Because most of their scorers usually like to do it on the ISO or that quick shoot. CJ McCollum likes to be in the post a little bit, get that back to the basket. Damian Lillard is one of the exceptions to the rule where he can pretty much do it from anywhere. But again, a lot of these guys, Carmelo, Norman Powell, they'll elect to have more difficult shots, which is kind of the problem, right? And, CJ McCollum showed us how much of a problem that can be near the end of the game, right? Like if you're not able to hit consistently or even a few of those, like I don't know, did he go like 1 for 12 or something like that near the end, or it was something really
the crazy stat was in that overtime period, in the 2 overtime periods outside of Damian Lillard, the rest of the team went 1 for 13. There were shots that are like point blank at the basket that they weren't able to go ahead and finish. That's nasty. That definitely hurts. You saw Robert Covington miss that dunk near the end. Obviously, CJ McCollum had the ultimate blooper of the night where he just steps out of bounds on a situation where they could potentially have tied the game. Yeah. But really, that's what it comes down to, and what we've been speaking about kind of throughout this Portland Trailblazers season. They're just the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde as far as their team's concerned. Not only are they just such a powerhouse offensively, but that powerhouse comes from very like individualistic style plays. Their assist percentage is not great. Their overall ball movement is not great, but they have a lot of incredible individual offensively talented players that allow them to do that. But on the other hand, they are the 29th ranked defense in the league. And that's going to come back and bite you. And it's showing you over 100%.
Here. No, there is no doubt in my mind, if they have a few other stops here and there, like this is a different game. But you also have to give credit to like a team like Denver, like their offense, the way it moves the ball, it's really tough to guard regardless. Like it doesn't matter what team you are. It's not easy to just stop them. You know what I mean? So in any case, it's going to bite them in the butt. Like you got a guy like Rondé playing extended minutes. And don't get me wrong, like Rondé is fantastic in terms of what he does, and he hustles, and that's why they call him Hustle Man Chap. But again, like yesterday, he was like minus 21 in like the I don't know, 18 minutes that he played. And that kind of takes him out of the game, right? So again, trying these things, trying different matchups, but you just either you die by not scoring enough from the rest of the guys, or you die by not playing defense. And unfortunately, yesterday it was a bit of both, and it was literally just Damian carrying them. And honestly, I have Portland going to the finals. I really do. That was my prediction. And there's still a series to play, but given the way that things have transpired in this series so far, like it's evident who the better team is, and it's Denver. And if Denver doesn't come out of this, especially I don't want them to go to a game 7, not even though in the past, like we've seen them go into like 2 game 7s in a row and still come out from a 3-1 deficit. Like that's in itself enough to tell you about a team. But I also know what Damian Lillard is like in a clinching game, right? In a series killing game. That boy will do what he needs to do, and he has had game winners on multiple people. There's people on his hit list. So like if I was Denver, I needed to end tomorrow. Otherwise, game 7, I think Portland takes it, no doubt. I don't know about you. How do you think that goes?
I mean, look, initially when I had gone and predicted this series, I had said Denver in 6, and I'm still hoping for that to be the case. But you're right. When it gets down to a winner takes all game, anything can happen. And frankly, Denver and Portland have had a game 7 already, 2019. And that one was, again, Denver at home, where they went ahead and frankly should have won that game, shot themselves in the foot. Dame didn't have a good game at all that one, but it was CJ McCollum that was able to go ahead and put them. But really, that's what it comes down to. One of those two guys usually are going to go off in that game. The real trouble is when they both go off, and once that happens, there's no time. And it's like, then it's just, look, it's one of those where you can get blown away by great offense, because frankly, not that Denver is great defense anyways, but great offense will be great defense. And that's why you don't want to put yourself into that situation, regardless of how good you have been historically at home. So while I will not agree that I think Portland would win in 7, I do think that Denver will be absolutely looking to put their foot on the throat of Portland, wipe this out, because Michael Malone, especially last year, really spoke about the fact that they don't want to be this like back to the wall team, this situation where it's like do or die, and that's when you go ahead and get through. That's just not – it's a very emotionally draining situation to be able to do that. And this is the first round. Denver is obviously looking to try and make a deep run this year, even though Jamal Murray not being there probably hurts their ceiling in order to be able to do that. But they're facing the winner of the Clippers or Mavericks series at the end of this, both of these. So that's going to be an insane grind, regardless of who the opponent happens to be. So it's just one of those where Denver will absolutely be looking like, look, let's get this done. Most likely that Clippers Mavericks series could be going 6, if not 7. It's definitely going 6.
It's definitely going 6. It has to go 6. But like, it's like, it's crazy. It's crazy how crazy is a weird word, because I'm going to use it 10 times in a row for this situation, because like the matchups in every single case in the West look insane. So whoever goes up, it's still good. Like second round is going to be a fantastic time for ball fans. But anyway, you mentioned something really interesting. You said something about how a great offense will always triumph over a good defense, right? Now, that kind of reminds me of the series between Brooklyn and Boston, and that just finished. Let's talk about that really quickly, because, you know, a chunk of what we want to talk about today is that new series coming up between Brooklyn and Milwaukee. And that, in my opinion, is the series of the entire playoffs. Seriously, because if there are two teams that are genuinely built like a championship team, it is those two teams. I'm sorry, from the West, you can argue like, you know, LeBron, look at the way that they're playing. Let's be honest. Like the Clippers, look at the way they're playing. Let's be honest. Everybody else are just great teams. But in terms of those that you can genuinely say that this is a championship team, there's no real weakness in any part of that, or if there is, it's just highlighted by something else. Like it's overshadowed by something great, which is the offense. So let's talk about Milwaukee and Brooklyn and what you expect from that series. Who do you got, and how many games, X factors, and the whole spiel?
Absolutely. Look, I've been super excited. Like I said, the reason we wanted to move this podcast to today is because, one, I was pretty confident that Brooklyn was going to go ahead and clean up the Boston series, even though they had that one mess up, obviously, to take away from my sweep prediction. That being said, if we go back to when we spoke about this earlier on in the season, to me, the Milwaukee Bucks were the one team that did everything right as far as the offseason was concerned. They got rid of the weaknesses in their point guard offense. They got rid of the necessity for Giannis to be the guy to initiate all of that offense.
Yeah.
And then, more importantly, they had growth internally from their separate guys who are outside on the wing, whether it be Pat Connaughton, whether it be Dante DiVincenzo, who unfortunately is now gone for the playoffs, and that's actually going to be something that could hurt them. And that's a big hit because that's solidity. But what all of this brought down to is that addition of Jrue Holiday, to me, on this team, and this is not even accounting for the fact that they could have gotten Bogdanovich, and we had already that conversation, but with that addition, what they brought into that team was not only playoff tenacity, but playoff smarts and the capability to be able to not only defend at an absolutely elite level, which Jrue Holiday is. This is an all-defensive player, but a guy who has not only gotten better from the three-point line year after year after year, but his assist game, his court vision has always been a huge part of what's made him so good for so many years, whether it be originally for the Sixers, whether it then be on his move to the Pelicans. Jrue Holiday has been that guy who's kind of just taken these teams, much like we speak about what Chris Paul has done for the Phoenix Suns or what Kyle Lowry does for the Toronto Raptors. These kind of guys just bring you that level of competitiveness, that level of fire, and that level of just, I won't lose, I won't go down like this, that it goes ahead and brings up the rest of the team. And Milwaukee was missing that a lot. So before that James Harden trade happened to be able to get them over to the Brooklyn Nets, I actually had the Milwaukee Bucks going all the way and winning the championship this year. So what that means to me is, given the fact that Brooklyn trade is what shifted me away and said Brooklyn is going to be the champion, that means that essentially this series is the NBA Finals. As far as I am concerned, this series is what's going to decide who walks away with that Larry O.B. at the end of this entire year. So to me, excitement is just absolutely sky high, ramped up. And in terms of keys, that's where it goes back to depth versus top-end talent. And usually, as we found in the playoffs,
the
top-end talent is able to go ahead and pull you through. Not always, much as we could say that we've seen, we could potentially argue that in the Toronto Raptors year, they didn't necessarily have the best player on the floor in the finals. Not necessarily. I mean, we can argue it. But even in this one, Giannis, there's obviously different arguments about where Giannis is placed on the echelon of top players in the NBA. You ask some people, he's straight up the best guy in the league because of his capability to be an absolutely dominant force on the defensive end and frankly unstoppable on the break. Where Giannis has hurt himself has been when that offense has slowed down, when a wall gets created as far as the defense is concerned. # Nick Nurse. But when that happens, that is where Giannis has struggled to be able to have a reliable outside jumper, to be able to get, defenses to actually hold him accountable there. But what has happened now is that pressure is being taken away from him because Jrue Holiday gets to be the one to initiate that offense. And now Giannis becomes that facilitator from the post where he is absolutely dominant. If you look at Giannis's post stats, he is in the 99th percentile of the NBA in terms of effectiveness in the post. And it is clear to see why, because his footwork is absolutely awesome. And that court vision that comes with the fact that his arms are like
so lengthy.
Mr. Fantastic. Yeah. It's just like going around there, rubber arms. And he's able to see over pretty much any 3, 4, whoever gets put on him. He's often taller than him too. It's just a great combination. So that to me is that X factor, that kind of connection and relationship that's there between Jrue over to Giannis and then getting everyone else involved from there, and how good Brooklyn will be able to react to that. Because as we have said about Brooklyn, if there's one question mark, there's not only that lack of size on the inside to be able to kind of prevent rim runs to the basket, but that wing defensive capability, it's very much by committee. Yes, you can say Durant is a really good defender on the wing, no doubt. And they've got a couple of other guys in Bruce Brown and these who are actually very solid defenders, but they have been able to play good defense in spurts. They haven't really been asked or really required to be able to play good defense for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, like extended periods of the game, because at any time they're like, look, our offense is going to be able to get us far out enough that we can go ahead and deal with whatever comes back the other way. But remember, Milwaukee is one of the best defensive teams in the league, and they've actually done quite well in being able to contain the percentages of the big three as far as that's concerned, even though they haven't necessarily been winning those games. So it'll all come back to those little battles, because I expect this to be a very competitive series. I don't expect any of these games to be blowouts. They're all going to be single-digit point games, and it's going to come down to who wins those little moments. If I'm a betting man, I'm going to say that Brooklyn is going to do it because they have, in my opinion, the best point guard in the league right now in James Harden. They've got the best three in the league in Kevin Durant. And then you have, of course, the ultimate X factor, the ultimate one-on-one dude in Kyrie Irving that's able to just kind of create that much chaos that you will never be able to truly trap any one of those guys, which leaves Joe Harris. Unfortunately, Jeff Green's not there, but leaves Landry Shamet, like these guys who are able to go and shoot open threes to really put damage on Milwaukee in quick time. And I think that's where Brooklyn's going to be just a little too much for Milwaukee to handle.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the skill level, right? It's always going to be your top, usually like rotation-wise, you have your top 7, top 8 guys that kind of get rotated in and out. If you look at just the top 3, that's already better than the top 5, personally, of, Milwaukee, let's be honest. And one of the things people forget is that with top-tier scorers, guys like Kevin Durant, guys like Kyrie Irving, guys like James Harden, especially James Harden, is that they're able to adjust the game to whatever's given to them. You know what I mean? So that in itself is IQ, it's skill, it's learned, but it's also something that, has been asked from them year after year. You could throw any defense on James Harden. He's still super successful. Super successful. If he's not scoring, he's facilitating the ball in a fantastic way, just based off of the amount of attention he draws, right? You have Kevin Durant. Who's gonna stop Kevin? No one stops Kevin Durant.
Like a famous commercial. Nobody.
Exactly. Bad boy. He's a bad boy. All right. Now, Kyrie, has been given the opportunity to just kind of be that guy, come in, throw in some buckets, and play his game. Seriously, when he's given that freedom, lot of difficulty guarding that guy. So you have Drew Holiday. His task is so immense. Think about it. Either they're going to be putting him on Kyrie, or they're going to be putting him on James. And like in any case, you stop one of them. Do you trust the rest of your team to stop the other guys? And again, we talk about bully basketball. Most of the time with these guys, your Kyrie's, Kevin Durant's, James Harden. As much as James Harden and Kyrie are really good at getting to the basket and getting those layups and stuff like that, with that size, it could be very tough. And so even if they're very good at it and they may be able to, hit a lot of those, it may be more difficult given how much slower everything is. And number 2, jumpers. I think jumpers will kill these guys. Okay? So if, let's say, any of these guys start going on a shooting slump, at that point, Milwaukee's going to keep playing that bully basketball inside the paint. I think most of their points are going to be coming from the inside. The lead keeps growing, right? It just depends on how well, Brooklyn is going to be shooting. Again, because of how much length, how much size is in the paint there. So really excited to see how the offense works. Really, really excited. And I'm really excited to see how Milwaukee plays because, you said it, dude, this is going to be a neck and neck series. I actually think that there will be like 1 or 2 games that are really, really close. But for the most part, I feel like if Brooklyn gets away with it, they get away with it. You know what I mean? Or if Milwaukee's just way ahead and the shooting's not going, it could be a complete blowout. I just don't think that it's going to be as close as you think. in terms of scores, but in
Sure.
terms of the series, definitely I do see it being a long series. And what a joy. This is the second round only. Imagine that,
Yeah.
right?
No, absolutely. And that's where, hey, seedings work out. And funny enough, you would think that Brooklyn, just based around the level of talent, the level of shooting, all that they have, that they would potentially be a faster team. But funny enough, it's actually Milwaukee that's way ahead as far as pushing the pace is concerned. But that is also a clash of different styles. And obviously some of that has to do with how much of like an assassin James Harden is at being able to just snipe through a defense and kind of take that time to be able to assess what's going on, break it down, and go from there. But Milwaukee, on the other hand, loves to be able to push the pace to get everything going. Obviously, Giannis thrives in that, but more so than just Giannis, that Chris Middleton factor is going to be a huge, huge thing as far as this series is concerned, especially because Middleton is going to be probably that guy who's going to be sitting a lot of the time on Kevin Durant.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just one of those where Middleton is one of those defenders that, you don't really spend too much time on or think about just how good he is, but Middleton is an absolutely elite defender at the wing. And the fact that he has been also their closer as far as shooting is concerned, as far as just plain and simple, their best outside threat and their best jumper in general, that is going to be a huge load that's also placed on him. So as much as, Kevin Durant is likely going to have to deal with him defensively, frankly, on the defensive end himself, he could probably take a little bit of time off because they're going to be spending more time throwing like Bruce Brown on him and other of those guys who are there more for their defensive capabilities to go and like get into him. So it all comes down to also a battle of fatigue, especially as this series does get deeper. And I said, I have it as a 6-game series, that Brooklyn is going to be able to take it, but I could very well see it go to all the way to 7 and then make it that home game in Brooklyn and really force them to kind of show off and show up all the way through to be able to prove that they are who they say they are as far as the championship is concerned. Because look, it's funny. The reason why it sucks that this series is in the second round is because, especially for a team like Milwaukee, like Brooklyn obviously is a championship or bust regardless of where they're set up here. But for Milwaukee, this is an incredibly, incredibly important year.
Without a doubt.
It's one of those where, look, they lost last year to Miami in a year that they were like, look, we should be a finalist this year. Like that should have been a year in which Milwaukee represented the East in the finals. All the numbers, all the way they played, everything showed that as being the case. And then they just got absolutely discombobulated by the physicality that Miami brought. And credit to Mike Budenholzer, credit to how the Milwaukee team has actually gone ahead and adjusted their game this year. Obviously, the Drew Holiday edition made a huge difference in that end, but just more so than that, they took away a lot of what was hurting Giannis, and that has changed around this offense completely. So their pace is much faster than it was last year, even though they were a fast team. And their three-point shooting has become even more deadly. They were second in the league in three-point percentage, fourth in the league in makes. And even though this team has always been a high-volume three-point shooting team, the level that they have gone and gotten to this year as far as their refinement is concerned, and they at this point are a grizzled veteran team as far as playoff experience is concerned, even though they haven't reached the heights that they would have otherwise wanted as far as finals appearances are concerned. Obviously had the loss to the Raptors back in 2019, had the year before that in which they also had a disappointing loss to they lose to in 2018. Don't recall now, but regardless, they have had a couple of series now in which they have been hot favorites going in, and it just hasn't worked out for them. And this series now is likely one where they're now going in as the underdogs for sure, but they also have the expectations with them. It's like a crappy middle thing. Like, well, what do you do? We're the underdogs, but we're supposed to be up here. Yeah. What do we do? Where do we get there? So that's why I feel like Milwaukee's going to go out like, look, the only way we can do this is to go out as if we have nothing to lose, take this as 100%. If it was the NBA Finals, and we are playing this as if we're fighting for the Larry O.B. right now. So I expect this to be a gritty, physical, and just straight up like nasty series in which no team likes each other. They're absolutely in each other's grill to be able to get that possession hustle every bucket, and it's going to be exciting. I am hyped.
Here's the difference. The X factor for me is not necessarily a player, but it's how well you can attack the other team. So what I mean by that is you have 3 players that the entire success of the Brooklyn Nets relies on: James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. But the most deadly out of all of them is not Kevin Durant, it's not Kyrie, it's James Harden. If you can get James Harden into foul trouble, and if you can get some of these bigs, like for example, you're a big team, if you can get Kevin Durant in foul trouble, you have a very good shot at winning the game.
True.
Do you get what I'm saying? And likewise, like, you can get, the thing about Milwaukee and how deep they are is you can get Middleton in foul trouble, but they can have someone else pick up Durant. You know what I mean? They have that depth on the defensive end, and on the offensive end, maybe they can play that team basketball. But again, it's 3 players on Brooklyn that carry that entire team. You take one of them out of the equation, or you take 2 of them out of the equation, it's going to be very hard for Brooklyn to do anything, right? So focus on that. Focus on attacking those guys, and maybe you have yourself a cheat code to the cheat code team. And so that's my take. If I was Mike, I'd tell that straight to the team. Apart from that, that's what I got to say about that. Brooklyn given everything, Brooklyn in probably 6 or 7.
6 or 7. I think we're pretty much in agreement on that. Likely that the top end talent is going to be good enough to be able to take them there. But as always, that's what makes the playoffs so damn exciting. What you think is going to happen doesn't always. Look at what's happening with the Phoenix Suns series. Look at what's happening with what we had earlier on with Memphis coming through, getting Utah down, but now Utah's coming around and coming there. Dallas Mavericks bringing the Clippers down 2-0, and the Clippers come roaring back to make it 2-2, and now looking like they may be the ones in control of the series. So it's just one of those, Boardman's getting paid, but more so than that, Pandemic P is finally shaking off some of that. He might have gotten the vaccine because, he's looking like regular season Paul George again. So that's definitely exciting news as far as the Clippers are concerned. But what's always most exciting is the Swing Podcast is here always for all of the big moments as far as the NBA is concerned. Definitely keep interacting with us. You can follow us on Instagram at the Swing Podcast. As always, we're incredibly excited to show up here at least once, if not twice a week, right here live on SportsTrends, where you can catch us not only on the SportsTrends Facebook page, definitely follow us on YouTube, where you get to see us live on there. And also, for those who have IPTV, SportsTrends IPTV channel, we are there live as we do this as well. So definitely all of those different ways to be able to catch us. But speaking of catching us, we are going to be taking our leave from here. We're going to be back for the next podcast to be able to break down what's been going on, what some other of the matchups will be, and potentially, if we're seeing some of these series stretch to 6 or 7 games, we may have another emergency pod to really speak about the drama, the high intensity, and hopefully less water bottles being thrown at players all together.
Yeah, shout out to all the amazing American fans. Amazing. Just way to ruin it for everyone. Idiots, all of them.
Oh man, it just feels like you've been cooped up in the house too long and you forgot how to act when you get to the arena. It's ridiculous.
It's not one of those things. Stop it. Those people in itself, they know who they are. They've always been like that, and they need to be ousted from society. Sorry.
Ooh, damn. Cancel.
Outcast them.
Well, they are being banned from the arena, so hopefully that can take care of that, and we can go back to focusing on what makes these playoffs so damn exciting. Getting into the end of the first round, going into the second. And as always, the Swing Podcast is here for you. And until the next time, we will catch you. HK, that guy Owais, Zuko, he's always excited.
You guys hear him? My boy. My boy.
Absolutely. He's always excited. Look at those eyes. That is clutch Dame look right there. Like, that is a death. You don't want that on you as a defender.
Dame time, baby. Dame time.
Well, he's calling it. But until then, we're calling this episode, and we will see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves, guys, and we will see you. Bye.
Lillard, long range three. Defended by Simmons. Is this the trigger?